Clemson Tiger fans, welcome back to another edition of the Clemson Sports Show. And I have the honor to be in the presence of an Olympic track star, it appears like, because if you didn't know, earlier this week, our own Matt Connolly put on the headband, put on the long socks, and he did a sprint against one of the fellow Clemson beat reporters. Matt, take it away. What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, it was kind of a joke. It started off, people were kind of joking, and then we decided maybe we could raise some money for charity. So was trying to do that, had good intentions. Not much of that actually ended up getting set up, although I did tweet out a link to donate to Harvest Hope. So hopefully people did that. I know some people told me that they did. But yeah, it was, in theory, it was a good idea to donate to charity and get in shape and lose some pounds. And I was going to try to lose 30 pounds. I lost about 3. So a little progress there. But no, we had a good time with it. Good. Got a little run in before Thanksgiving food.
Yeah, I wish I could have been there and participated in the race, showing off that 4.4 speed that I have. You know, I've gone up against some of the Clemson wide receivers after their practices before, and I have to say, people, I have beaten them, believe it or not. But today's podcast.
Yeah, this is not April Fool. This isn't April Fool's Day, Joseph. I don't think people are going to fall for it. But yeah, you would have definitely beat me. So I'm kind of glad you didn't make it.
I may have torn an ACL in the process. I've not run on that turf, that field before. I know you have. You've done some practice. You know, I haven't been able to though. So that was a pretty cool experience though that you all had. It was on Monday, I believe. I'm here in Florida, so I was kind of keeping track from a distance. But yeah, today's podcast though is not about that. We're all about rivalry week. Wow, try saying that 5 times in a row. South Carolina on Saturday. Really looking forward to it. We talked about it on our last podcast. Matt, what's getting you hyped up? You know, I know Thanksgiving's right around the corner, but what are you thankful for regarding this matchup coming up?
Yeah, man, I'm just looking forward to a really good game. You know, I know South Carolina announced today it's a sellout, which should be fun. You know, the last time these two teams played in 2019, it was like a half and half crowd in Columbia. There was no excitement at all. We all knew going into the game that Clemson was going to destroy them. I think Clemson's going to win this week as well and win fairly easily. But look, you've got 2 bowl eligible teams. This is the worst Clemson team probably, at least in the last few years, at least since Deshaun Watson's been there. So, you know, it's a Clemson offense that has struggled on the road. Clemson as a team has struggled on the road. It's 2-3. So there's a little definitely compared to what it has been in recent years, there's a little more excitement for this Clemson South Carolina game. I think just an opportunity to actually have a decent game. So, yeah, man, really looking forward to it. I know, you know, I actually used to cover South Carolina several years back. So that can be a cool little fun environment to play in and to see. And I know the Clemson players were talking this week about how they're really hoping it'll be a great environment, loud and all that kind of stuff. And I think it probably will be. So it should be a lot of fun.
So I kind of want to put into perspective what you just said there. You know, you said it's probably one of the worst Clemson teams we've seen in a while. And that much is true. But one of the worst teams we've seen from Clemson in a while is 8-3, just beat a top 15 team. You know, they're still in contention for the ACC Atlantic. And now they're going up against a South Carolina team that has one of their best teams in not a while, but in the past, few years at least. So that kind of shows just a little bit of a difference between these two programs and what the expectations are for each of them. You know, South Carolina's 6-5, Clemson's 8-3, and a lot of people are down on Clemson's season, and a lot of people are high on South Carolina's season, and rightfully so, coming off of the past couple of years with the Gamecocks. But I just want you to kind of give a little bit of some context to this matchup here. What have the last few years been like between these two teams, and what are you kind of expecting on Saturday as well?
Yeah, I mean, look, like it's clear that, you know, Clemson's the much better program right now. It has been for a while now. I mean, these games haven't been particularly close in recent years. You know, actually the 2015 game was kind of surprisingly close. And that was a game that, you know, South Carolina was awful that year. Spurrier left in the middle of the season. So that was a very weird deal. And you know, and the player said this week, you know, the records don't matter. None of that matters. when these two teams play. And a lot of times people say that, but really the better team's going to win and usually does win. In this case, sometimes the record doesn't matter, but sometimes the record matters and that's really what it's about, but sometimes it doesn't. I mean, that 2015 game, Clemson, was undefeated at that point. South Carolina, I think, was 3-8 and it just lost to the Citadel. It ended up being like a 3-point game. So you just never know what's going to happen. I think Clemson matches up really well with South Carolina. I think that Jason Brown and the South Carolina offense are not going to have much success at all passing against Clemson. I think South Carolina has some talented running backs, but I just don't see them having a whole lot of success getting going either. I think really just if Clemson's offense can take care of the ball, if DJ can avoid turnovers, just take care of the ball, play smart, I think Clemson should be able to win pretty comfortably. But yeah, Clemson needs to not let that environment affect them, and DJ in particular, because it can be a tough place to play for sure.
So I'm going to throw out a nice little stat here. We got to think about a name for my stats. Let's call it Joe's stat of the pod for this one here. But put in the comments any suggestions that you all may have, because I'm not really good with that kind of stuff. But if Clemson wins this Saturday against South Carolina, it would be their 7th straight win against the Gamecocks. That'd be tied for the largest win streak in this rivalry's history. The longest is actually held by Clemson from 1934 to 1940. So that's a little stat that you can throw out to your friends. Just give credit to Joseph Hastings. And we're really interested in seeing if Clemson's able to extend this win streak on Saturday. Matt, let's go over to what the players had to say this week. James Skalski, Baylon Spector, they talked about being excited about playing in this hostile environment. You mentioned it being a sellout crowd. What did they have to say during their conversations with the media?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, they said the more hostile, the better, which I thought was a very interesting take. Skalski was saying he's played there in 2017 when it was a night game, a really fun crowd. That game kind of got out of hand. You had, South Carolina fans were throwing stuff on the field and were unhappy with the touchdown call, and just all kinds of crazy stuff was happening in that game. And Skalski said he'd much rather that than like the 2019 game where it was about 50-50 crowd-wise, and there were a ton of Clemson fans there and stuff. So I thought that was very interesting. Baylon Spector kind of said the same thing. That they enjoy the hostile crowds. It fires up the away team as well and gets them going too. So I thought that was interesting. Just talking with players and coaches, it seems like they're impressed with South Carolina's running game, probably more than the passing game. Josh Vann at receiver for South Carolina has been pretty good this year. Outside of him, there just hasn't been much of anyone to really step up. Saquandre White, number 11 for South Carolina, has ran really hard. He's a good running back. Who actually started his career at Florida State, and then Kevin Harris led the SEC in rushing last year. So, he's had a pretty good year this year as well. So, the strength for sure of South Carolina's team is running the ball. The strength of the defense is definitely up front. It in a way, it's kind of like last week where it's strength on strength. South Carolina's strength is running. Clemson's been really good against the run, and then Clemson's strength is running the ball on offense, and South Carolina's got a pretty good defensive front. So. My early thoughts are on the game where I trust Clemson's offense to run the ball better than I trust South Carolina's offense to do much of anything. So I give Clemson the edge right now, but we'll have a full preview and all that kind of stuff up later this week.
I find it really interesting that it was the defensive players who had to say that, they're appreciative of the hostile environment, because if you're the opposing offense, going into a crowd like that, and you're assuming it's going to be mostly South Carolina fans, if you're DJ Uiagalelei, you probably want to be able to hear. You probably don't want that hostile of an environment, having to go to silent counts, things like that. And we know that Clemson has had their struggles on the road thus far this season. So, I do find it a little bit intriguing that the defensive players who probably get fueled by being in that hostile environment where you hear the crowd going crazy and then you make a great stop and then the crowd goes, low to a mute. I think they kind of fuel off of that more so than the offense kind of feels off of that loud crowd. It's really tough to get those calls in. So I found that pretty interesting.
Yeah. Hey, who knows? DJ might have gone and said, "Hey guys, you don't need to say all that. Just keep that to yourselves. We'll talk about that. We don't need them to hear that." But no, I mean, I do. I think that's just the mindset the whole team has. It's like, hey, let's go in there. Let's take care of business. Everyone's against us. Let's buckle a chin strap, spot the ball, and let's go do it. So I think that's the mindset of the whole team. But yeah, it's definitely affects the offense a lot more when the crowd's going than the defense. That's for sure.
Well, if you're able to, as Clemson did last week against Wake Forest, I'm not expecting them to rush for 333 yards. Let's not get that mistaken. But if you're able to rush for over 200 yards, you have over 4.55 yards per carry. I think that's going to be a recipe for success against South Carolina, especially with Joe Ngata being out for this game. You know, I know what they were able to do against Wake Forest defense, running the ball. I'm not expecting that kind of production against South Carolina, but I think they're going to need to rely on that ground game once again to win this one.
Yeah, I do too. And you know, South Carolina has been opportunistic with turnovers this year. So, you know, the running backs, Kobe Pace fumbled this last game. He's going to need to do a nice job of protecting the ball. DJ, you know, he struggled with turnovers some, particularly, you know, against Pitt. He had the pick six, which was a really bad play. So you can't have anything like that where you're scoring for the other team. You know, you can't fumble like you did against Florida State. I mean, I think they really need to take care of the ball. As well as Clemson played last week, they still turned it over 3 times. And you don't want to do that on the road. You know, Dabo mentioned this week the biggest difference in the games when South Carolina, which, and I agreed with him some, in some ways I didn't, but he said the biggest difference in the streak South Carolina had where they won 5 straight was just the turnovers. And just, you know, Clemson couldn't hang on to the ball, which some of that was true. South Carolina also had some really, really, really good players on those teams too, though. You know, particularly defensively when you look at Stephon Gilmore, who ended up being, you know, one of the best defensive players in NFL now. So, you know, definitely you want to protect the ball. But these South Carolina teams aren't nearly as good as those teams were either. But yeah, I mean, you know, you can't turn it over to let the crowd get hype and feel great about your chances.
All right, so that was a little bit of a tease for our upcoming preview, which is going to be released on Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. Let's kind of go into more so what we got to hear from the coaches, specifically this week. I know Dabo Swinney did his call-in show on Sunday. Becky from Gaffney, she's always a treat. Talk to me a little bit about what we heard on that call-in show and also at the Tuesday media press conference.
Yes, so Becky from Gaffney is a fan favorite now. You know, Clemson ran the bubble screen again to open the game. I shouldn't say bubble screen, but they ran a little RPO that ended up being a little screen pass to open the game Saturday against Wake Forest. Didn't pick up much. So Becky said that she wasn't going to bring up the fact that for the second straight week, Clemson ran a bubble screen and got absolutely nowhere to open the game. Dabo said they're running it to honor her, and she said, if you want to honor me, please just stop running it. So that was funny. But yeah, I mean, it's, you know, that call-in show is always awesome, very entertaining. I encourage people. Actually, last week was last week, so encourage people to tune in next year. But yeah, that's always fun and entertaining. As far as throughout the week, you know, we heard from Tony Elliott. I actually talked to him a little bit just about the job search. I shouldn't say job search, but just job contact he's getting from some places. You know, TCU reached out to him earlier this season, had a little phone call. He's not going to,
right?
Yeah, he's not going to end up there. It was just kind of a conversation, a kind of get to know you thing. You know, we have up on ClemsonSports.com. He went into a lot of detail about what he's looking for in a job. You know, he definitely wants a chance to be successful, wants to have good alignment with him, the AD, the administration, a place that's going to give him some support. So, you know, he's the guy who's had a lot of chances in the past to be a head coach and has turned them down. We'll see what ends up happening this year. You know, Brent Venables, another name to watch just as the coaching carousel gets heated up. And then, you know, Dabo, I think just talking about South Carolina, just, you know, talked about how important this game is to so many people. He definitely knows that you know, it's a huge game in this state. You hear about it all year, whether you win or you lose. So just listen to him talk about that, talking about what it was like to go through the streak where they lost 5 in a row and how difficult that was. And then just what they need to do this game to win, which is protect the ball, stop the run is a big thing. And then, just protect DJ as well. Don't let him get hit. Don't let him get sacked. Allow him to stand in the pocket and make some throws. So, yeah, just a lot of interesting stuff said this week. We already have plenty of coverage up on ClemsonSports.com, and we'll have a lot more to come leading up to Saturday's game.
So you mentioned Venables. I had already brought up, you know, we talked about Tony Elliott too before this podcast. You just mentioned him there, that conversation you had with him. I'm not going to ask you to like put a percentage on, the chances that either of them leave, but I do want to ask you, Matt, what would be the impact if Elliott or Venables or potentially even both leave the program after the season?
Yeah, and it's interesting with Venables. I think people just assume that he doesn't want to be a head coach ever, and I don't think that's necessarily the case. I do think he would like to be a head coach at some point. Now, is that going to happen this offseason? We'll see, but I do think that he does have that interest, and the same for Tony Elliott, obviously. So, if they left, I think obviously with Venables leaving, it would just be a huge loss. I mean, he's arguably the best defensive coordinator in the country. Every single season, no matter who they lose, who's coming back, whatever it is, he's going to put together a really good defense that's going to give you a chance to win most games. Obviously, there have been a few struggles here and there, particularly in the playoff when you look at LSU and Ohio State. But week in and week out, he does a really nice job and just gives his team a chance to win every game. Elliott, I know people have been down on him this year, but man, there's been so much turnover on that offense, so many injuries, so many new pieces. I think he would be a big loss. I mean, he's very good as an offensive coordinator. He's a guy that a lot of players look up to. I've had players in the past tell me he's like a father figure to them, someone they go to and they can trust. Even Will Shipley, a running back on this year's team, who's a freshman, who's not in Elliott's position room anymore, with Elliott coaching tight ends now, was talking this week about how, he texts Elliott late at night asking questions about watching film and stuff. It's just a guy that has a great relationship with pretty much everyone on that offense. So, I think it would be a huge loss, not only as just from X's and O's and putting together an offense, but also just from the kind of guy he is, a guy players look up to, a very good recruiter. So if either of those guys leave, if both of those guys leave, it would be a huge loss. I know Clemson fans have been pretty spoiled around here keeping them. I know they'd love to keep them for another offseason, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, it would definitely be a big loss if they leave.
Okay, if either of them leave, let's say Elliott leaves, let's say Venables leave, I'm going to throw those two hypothetical situations out at you. What would you want to see in the next Clemson offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator that would replace both of them?
Yeah, I think Clemson is a program that could go outside and go try to find the best available guy. Not necessarily, it's always been Dabo's, I shouldn't say always, but a lot of times Dabo is a guy who just likes promoting from within. And I'm not sure that in this situation that would be the best thing to do. I don't know that you really have a guy who's kind of ready on this staff. So I think you want to go find a defensive coach who is aggressive. It's funny. I've had some friends joke that like maybe just make James Skowski defensive coordinator. That would not happen. But you do want someone, I think, who's going to be aggressive, keep playing that aggressive style. Just continue to try to lead the country in sacks, do all that kind of stuff. And then the same with offense, just go find it, and maybe not an up and coming guy, but a guy who's proven it, but maybe not at a Power 5, a top level, someone like that. Someone who had some experience running an offense. I think Brandon Streeter obviously is a name that would be mentioned, but man, I think if I'm Clemson, I'd like to go outside and try to find a guy who's maybe run his own offense before, is a little more experienced, and knows kind of how to just do all the game planning, the X's and O's, putting together offense, all that kind of stuff.
Okay, so it seems like your response there was more so what you would do if you were in that position, but just knowing Dabo, do you think it's a greater likelihood that he hires from within to replace both of them? If that is the case, of course, once again, we're not saying that it's going to happen, but that time is eventually going to come. Do you think Dabo would hire with from within or search outside?
Yeah, I think he would at least look outside. I don't think he would just automatically say, hey, I'm going to hire from within. I do know, I'm sure Dabo has a list of people that he's interested in. I mean, he has a list for everything. He's as prepared as any coach in college football. And it starts with that kind of stuff, just always being ready for whatever may come his way. But yeah, I think he probably would go outside the program, or at least look outside to start. And, if he doesn't find someone he loves, maybe he stays within, but I think he would at least start looking outside.
Hey, as a former Gator, Dan Mullen. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding on that one.
I don't think he would go Mullen.
Yeah, I don't think that would be a good fit. Yeah, so I don't know if that's going to be necessarily a good fit, but we're going to talk, a lot more about this in the off season, and then we're going to obviously have our big preview for the South Carolina Clemson game on Friday, talk a little bit about the game itself, some of the matchups, what we're looking forward to being when we go there and see the game in person. But I want to get to some recruiting news. Obviously, that's something that's going to be of hot discussion for Clemson fans with early signing period right around the corner, December 15th. It's coming, and we're really getting prepared for what's going to happen. I had an opportunity last week to go out to California, as you all know, and I got to see, in particular, one player I do want to highlight is five-star quarterback Nico Iamaliava. Of course, he's a cousin of DJ Uiagalelei out of California, down in California. So I spoke with him, and honestly, going off of that conversation, I was thinking that maybe he could be the next in line to receive an offer. We know that Arch Manning is trending away from Clemson, so I thought Nico could have been that next guy in line. Instead, they decided to offer Christopher Vizina out of Alabama. Matt, do you think that's a little bit of a surprising choice, given the connections that Nico has to Clemson, the fact that he camped there during the summer? I think you got to see him in person. Do you think that was a little bit of a surprising decision that Clemson went that route?
Not really. I mean, I think they just kind of went with the next guy down their board. I don't know that they necessarily went family connections and thought about all of that kind of stuff. I just think that they kind of feel like that's the next guy on their board. I also don't think they're necessarily giving up on Arch or anything, but I think they're just expanding their board a little bit and went down the line to the next guy. So, yeah, I mean, I think both of those guys are very good quarterbacks. I've watched both of their films, saw them both at camp, so didn't think it was a huge surprise.
Yeah, so once again, like Matt said, I'm not expecting Clemson to fully give up on Arch Manning. When you get a quarterback of his caliber on campus twice, and the timing of those visits, you got the first visit for him in the summer, the last visit for him in the fall, I really do think that you have to keep on pushing, even if things seem really unlikely, which they kind of do at this time. But Arch is too talented to fully give up on. But like Matt said, they're continuing to expand their board, as they did with the wide receiver position with Antonio Williams. And we're going to be keeping tabs on his situation too. He's expected to take an official visit to Clemson down the line before he signs. So that's essentially it when it comes to recruiting news. We're going to be releasing some more stuff in the coming days. We're going to have a recruiting rivalry piece between Clemson and South Carolina, some ongoing matchups, some past matchups as well. And then also, if you didn't get to see some of my recaps that I posted on ClemsonSports.com, spoke with Justice Haynes, big-time running back out of Roswell, Georgia. He talked about where Clemson stands in his recruitment, the possibility of taking an official visit there. Highly encourage you to check that article out. I think Clemson is in a decent spot for him. He's a UGA legacy, but Clemson's making a strong impression. And then we also had an interview with Luke Montgomery, his father and his head coach, who's a big Clemson fan. A really in-depth recap of how their trip went. And once again, I would highly encourage you to check that out. And you can do so for a 7-day free trial. I know we've been promoting a deal that has expired, the $10 for a whole year, but this is free. This is absolutely free. 7-day free trial. Be sure to check it out and check out some of the great content that we're putting up on ClemsonSports.com. All right, so be sure to check out that content and also be on the lookout for our next YouTube video, which is going to be released on Friday, preview of the South Carolina Clemson game. Until next time, I'm Joseph Hastings. For Matt Connolly, we're signing off.